The Minnesota Vikings fall 34-33 against the Arizona Cardinals game on an away game at Arizona and fall to 0-2 on the season. Vikings are 2 plays away from being 2-0. An awful start to the season. Now, there's a lot of good that we saw in this game. We're going to get to that. We have to focus on the bad here because this is exactly what made the Vikings lose. Greg Joseph. Add him to the list. Add him to the list of Minnesota Vikings kickers that have lost us a game, and many of these players have lost us a season. Now, a lot of people will say at least this time it wasn't a season-ending missed kick. I mean, it's a 37-yard missed kick. At least it didn't end our season. This might have ended our season. I mean, Vikings are 0-2 right now. This might have ended our season. Even if the Vikings win basically all of their winnable games, maybe finish the season, even if they get 13 wins. No, 13 wins, they'll make the playoffs. Even if they get 10 wins. This kick might hold us against the playoffs. This might have just ruined our season. Now, Vikings are 0-2. They can definitely bounce back. I'll say that again. We are in a not very good division right now. I mean, it's looking like possibly the worst division in the NFL. Bears are on top of our division at 1-1. Now, yes, there's going to be a game that's going to happen tonight that will change things up, and Vikings will be tied at 3rd in their division. Just add them to the list of Minnesota Vikings kickers that have ruined. Now, this hasn't ruined our season yet, but this might have ruined our season. Gary Anderson, Blair Walsh, Daniel Carlson, Dan Bailey. You can probably find multiple other kickers that have ruined our season. Those are just the 4 that come to mind right now, and there's got to be more than that. I mean, we've seen the same thing over and over. We have a kicker who actually looks good. Greg Joseph, he doesn't look like a great kicker. He looks solid. I mean, he made 2 kicks from over 50 yards. In fact, he's made all of his kicks from over 50 yards so far this season. But loses when it counts. Misses when it counts. And who does this remind you of? Dan Bailey. Gary Anderson. Blair Walsh. Same story. Makes the big 50-yard kicks. But for some reason, when it counts the most, when it matters the most, the simple chip shots. Now, I guess this is 37 yards, so it's not considered a chip shot. But under 40 yards, they miss. And this might have ruined our season. Coach Zimmer, on Sunday's press conference, said, "I don't think you should make a decision on things like this today. I don't think you should make decisions on personnel right after a guy misses a kick." Now, being a little bit hypocritical there because Coach Zimmer has done that before. I mean, with Daniel Carlson, after a missed kick, he made the decision to cut him off the roster. Daniel Carlson would have made that kick yesterday. Looking really good with the Raiders, and I'm happy for Daniel Carlson. So, I mean, a little bit of a hypocritical statement right there, but I understand what he's saying. I mean, you shouldn't just cut Greg Joseph off the roster after that, because now you just created another problem. Now you have to spend this, you have to spend this week trying to find out who's going to be your kicker. That's not what you should be focusing on. You should be focusing on how to stop Russell Wilson and the Seattle Seahawks next week. So it's a great decision. I mean, Greg Joseph might be able to prove himself. We've seen this many times in the NFL so far. I mean, kickers look awful one week and go into the next week and make up for themselves. And the reason why we see this all the time in the NFL is because nobody is more mad about this missed kick than Greg Joseph. Now, I don't have any actual evidence to prove that. However, typically what we see in the NFL, kickers beat themselves up the most because they know they are the reason why we lost. Now, we're mad and we're blaming him, pointing fingers, but hopefully he can come back, bounce back after this loss, and maybe even go 100% next week and get us over 12 points. It's possible. It might happen. It might not. But the thing is, this week, we cannot focus on who should be our kicker. This should not be the main focus because next week we play the Seattle Seahawks at home. Finally. I mean, we haven't played the Seahawks at home for a long time, and we play them every year. It's good that we're going to play the Seahawks at home this time, and that's what the Vikings need to focus on. So keep Greg Joseph on the roster. I feel like I'm the only Vikings fan saying this, but you should keep Greg Joseph on the roster. And maybe when going into your bye week, you can focus on a new kicker, or going up against the Lions next week, you can likely look for a new kicker if Greg Joseph still looks as bad as he did on yesterday's game. Now, once again, Greg Joseph did make 2 kicks from over 50 yards and missed an extra point and then missed, obviously, the game-winning field goal, but we can definitely do better than this. The kicking game is most definitely the biggest reason why the Vikings lost. I mean, even if Greg Joseph just made his extra point, we would have went into overtime 34-34, and then Vikings would possibly be able to win there. Even if Greg Joseph made his extra point, Vikings still likely or possibly could have won the game depending on who wins the coin toss, because both these offenses are great and the coin toss would decide the game. So even then, Greg Joseph just lost us the game, missed 4 potential points for the Minnesota Vikings. And that's the biggest reason why the Vikings lost. Another big reason why the Vikings lost, they allowed 34 points and did exactly what I said was going to make the Vikings lose. Allowing explosive plays on offense, which they did all game. These Vikings corners look awful. Last year, Vikings corners were the worst in the NFL. I mean, they were all inexperienced guys. You had Cameron Dantzler, Jeff Gladney, all these inexperienced guys who were playing with the Vikings. And then you also had Holton Hill start some games. You had Mark Fields out there. I mean, inexperienced guys on the secondary. This year, it's a different story. These are all longtime veterans and look horrible. So if we take a look at Vikings PFF grades, this is by both of the weeks, it's terrible. I mean, Patrick Peterson, 53.4 PFF grade. Our starting corner, 53.4 PFF grade. And it gets worse from there. Bashaud Breeland, 29.3 PFF grade. 29.3. Bashaud Breeland. Well, I think I saw a stat on Twitter earlier. I think he's the worst in the NFL when it comes to corners who played over, is it 20 snaps? It was something like that. Bashaud Breeland doesn't look good. Mackenzie Alexander, 42 PFF grade. Again, awful. Chris Boyd, 29.8 PFF grade. And then finally, Cameron Dantzler, who has a 70.5, but the only reason why Cameron Dantzler does have a 70.5 is simply because he hasn't played very much, and he did a great job when it comes to coverage, missed some tackles. Cameron Dantzler, we know how limited he is. Cameron Dantzler is by no means going to be a lockdown corner, but he's a solid player when it comes to covering receivers. Terrible tackler, though. And just to add insult to injury for the Vikings corners, Mike Hughes has a 71.7 PFF grade. 71.7 PFF grade. Mike Hughes, 2018 first-round draft pick for the Minnesota Vikings, traded to the Kansas City Chiefs in the offseason, has a higher PFF grade than all of the Vikings corners on the depth chart right now. Which, good for him. I sound a little mad when I'm saying that because obviously it's Mike Hughes and Vikings. I would like him to be in purple and gold with the Vikings. I'm very happy for Mike Hughes. I mean, injuries has ruined his career. He's had no chance to prove himself in the NFL. And I'm so happy with the Kansas City Chiefs that he is finally proving himself. But it's painful that he is not in Vikings uniform doing that. So great for Mike Hughes, but it sucks because I would like to see him with the Minnesota Vikings still. Now, we just covered the Vikings corners, which look awful. It can get better. I mean, this is a new secondary. They have to work together, build chemistry. These are veterans. I'm assuming that they understand the playbook, and I'm hopeful in our defensive coaching staff that this can improve going into against the Seattle Seahawks and more into the season. And we just covered the Vikings kicking game, which lost us the game. However, Vikings look good. Vikings look really good after that Arizona Cardinals game. Bengals was just a dumpster fire. That game should not have went into overtime. Vikings should have won that game. Especially seeing on how the Bengals played against the Chicago Bears. Vikings should have won that game. However, it was week 1, sloppy week. Vikings looked really good against the Arizona Cardinals. Offense scored 27 points against the Arizona Cardinals defense. That's 27 because there was a pick 6 on defense. But that was great for the Minnesota Vikings offense. Kirk Cousins making plays with his arms and his legs. I have said it many times on this podcast. Kirk Cousins can use his legs. Kirk Cousins can run. He just doesn't. And it's such a relief to see Kirk Cousins feeling the pressure and making a play out of it. Because the last 2 seasons of Kirk Cousins, what we saw when he feels the pressure, he forces dumb plays. He tries to force the ball into double coverage. He throws it away, accepts a sack. These are things you don't have to do. Kirk Cousins feels the pressure, this season so far has felt the pressure, check the ball down to get Dalvin Cook, check the ball down to a tight end, make a play, use your legs. This is what we saw from Kirk Cousins, who looks really good so far this season. And I'm so happy to see it because this is something that was holding the Vikings back all of 2019 and 2020. KJ Osborne, Jefferson, Thielen all had a receiving touchdown. KJ Osborne looks excellent, and I'm so happy to see it. Vikings had just 3 penalties on yesterday's game. That's 3 penalties for 16 yards. Incredible for the Minnesota Vikings. A huge improvement from week 1. On top of that, obviously, the chef, Dalvin Cook, is unstoppable. 6 yards per carry. Now, he didn't have a touchdown, and he only had 22 carries, which only 22 carries. Now, it's Dalvin Cook. He usually gets more than that. Saying only 22 is kind of weird, but Dalvin Cook looks great. I mean, 6 yards per carry against the Arizona Cardinals defense that held Derrick Henry to under 4 yards per carry. Dalvin Cook's better than Derrick Henry. I'm sorry, I'm going to say it because it is true. And then on the defensive side of the ball, there was a lot of highlights. Now, yes, we just talked about the fact that they allowed 34 points against the Arizona Cardinals. A lot of huge explosive plays allowed. There's a lot of highlights. Danielle Hunter, an absolute beast. Danielle Hunter, undoubtedly one of the best defensive ends in the NFL, and after this season, might be the best defensive end in the NFL. Danielle Hunter had 3 sacks. Sacked Kyler Murray. Yes, that's Kyler Murray. 3 times. Who doesn't usually get sacked that often? He usually breaks pressure and runs with the ball. Danielle Hunter got 3 sacks against Kyler Murray, on track to get 34 sacks in the season, breaking the all-time single season sack record by Michael Strahan set in 2001. Danielle Hunter is second in the NFL in sacks. That's second behind Chandler Jones, who got 0 sacks yesterday against the Minnesota Vikings. However, did have 5 sacks in the first week against the Tennessee Titans. Danielle Hunter is a beast. Pay this man all the money he deserves. I am so happy to see him. Just imagine if we had Danielle Hunter last year. I mean, Vikings still probably wouldn't have made the playoffs considering how bad the Vikings defense as a whole was last year. Vikings were dead last in pass rush last year. Danielle Hunter just brings that to the table, that pass rush that we needed desperately on this Vikings defense. Because Vikings were unable to rush the passer all season last year, which really held the Vikings back, and the Vikings offense was forced to pass to catch up all game, every game. So having Danielle Hunter back is huge, and it's so good to see that he looks like how he did in 2018 and 2019 so far. Dude already has 4 sacks on the season, and it's just week 2. Danielle Hunter looks amazing, and I'm so happy to see him back with the Minnesota Vikings in purple and gold. He's going to make a Pro Bowl this year. It's undoubtedly going to happen, and he possibly can break the all-time sack record set by Michael Strahan in 2001. On top of that, Vikings had 2 interceptions, including a pick 6. Nick Vigil got a pick 6 against Kyler Murray. That's the first Minnesota Vikings pick 6 since Anthony Harris in 2019, I believe it was, against the Seattle Seahawks, who we play next week. That was a Monday Night Football primetime matchup where the Vikings lost. So Nick Vigil got his first NFL touchdown, pick 6 yesterday against Kyler Murray. On top of that, Eric Kendricks, an absolute beast. I mean, yes, our Vikings defense might not be that great. Yes, we allowed 34 points. Now it's a Arizona Cardinals offense, an excellent offense. Vikings allowed a lot of explosive plays, and just these corners, the secondary as a whole does not look great right now. We have Eric Kendricks and Danielle Hunter, 2 of the best, 2 huge superstars at their positions. Eric Kendricks is the best middle linebacker in the NFL, hands down, no question about that. And then on top of that, Danielle Hunter, top 5 defensive ends in the NFL, and doesn't get credited for it. Eric Kendricks is holding it down with 26 tackles on the leading the Minnesota Vikings with 26 tackles, which is second in the NFL. Minnesota Vikings defense has some huge superstars. On top of that, we have Harrison Smith, obviously, Xavier Woods, who also got an interception. Vikings have a lot of stars, a lot of great players on defense, but it's those corners, the most important position on defense, that is really holding us back so far. If the Miami Dolphins are still looking to trade X, give the Dolphins what you can to get him. If we can get that lockdown corner, we should be set. We're winning the division. If you can put Xavier Howard on, if you can put him on Devontae Adams, you put him on Allen Robinson, Vikings are winning the division, hands down, no question about it. Now, that's if the Dolphins are willing to trade. Now, it's going to take a few first-round draft picks that the Vikings will have to give up, but it is worth it because it is so important to have a lockdown corner on your team, and the Vikings should give the Dolphins what they can to get Xavier Howard in purple and gold. That is if the Dolphins are willing to trade him. Now, it's not looking like it is, but there has been trade rumors, and typically from what I've seen over my years of watching the NFL, rumors are usually true. They usually are true. So if the Dolphins are looking to trade him, Vikings should give him everything they can. Bring him in purple and gold. Put him man coverage against Davante Adams, and also use your safeties to double team Adams as well. So Vikings should win their division if they do get a lockdown corner. No question about that. On top of that, Minnesota Vikings wide receivers look excellent. And I'm so excited to see what KJ Osborne can do. He's going to find the end zone a lot of times this year. He's going to. You take a look at this Vikings offense. We were saying biggest question mark, biggest red flag going into the season. Who's going to be the third target for the Minnesota Vikings? We needed that X factor, that extra guy who can step up for the Minnesota Vikings, and it's KJ Osborne. KJ Osborne looks amazing. You take a look at these Vikings receivers on Sunday's game against the Arizona Cardinals. KJ Osborne led the team with 5 receptions, 91 receiving yards, and a touchdown. That's his first NFL touchdown. And in the preview to this matchup, I did the bold prediction of the week, saying that KJ Osborne was going to get his first NFL touchdown, which he did against the Arizona Cardinals in the second play of the game. It's good to see Kirk Cousins is willing to take those big plays, make those 60-yard plays, as since we lost Stephon Diggs, we haven't seen so much of. KJ Osborne leading the team with the receptions, or leading the team with receiving yards, 167 receiving yards so far this season. Justin Jefferson, 6 receptions, 65 receiving yards, and a touchdown. Justin Jefferson, not quite where we were expecting him to be so far this season. I would expect him to be over 200 receiving yards so far. Justin Jefferson not looking all that great. Now, again, it's Justin Jefferson. When I say he doesn't look great, it just means that he doesn't look as good as we were expecting. Obviously, Justin Jefferson still looks excellent, but he has a 57.8 catch percentage so far this season. Now, the drop passes that we've seen from Justin Jefferson, most of them are very hard to make those catches. But again, from Justin Jefferson, he should be making those catches because of what we saw that he can do in the 2020 season. Not looking all that great so far, although he does have a 100 completion percentage. That's after completing 11-yard pass to KJ Osborne in week 1. And then on top of that, Adam touchdown Thielen, 6 receptions for 39 receiving yards and a touchdown. Adam Thielen has 3 receiving touchdowns for the Minnesota Vikings, and that is tied second in the NFL. I think that's tied with like 8 people. So Adam Thielen's back. Not like he ever went away, but it's good to know that seeing a 30-some-year-old wide receiver coming in and still having 3 receiving touchdowns in 2 weeks looks great. And he's only trailing behind Rob Gronkowski right now. So not a good start to the season. But there's some highlights. The Vikings receivers, KJ Osborne stepping up, Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen still looking great, Dalvin Cook being an absolute beast in the backfield, Kirk Cousins looking excellent, 3rd-ranked quarterback by PFF so far this season, Danielle Hunter looking amazing. He's on track to win the single-season sack record, Eric Kendricks being, again, the best middle linebacker in the NFL. There's a lot of highlights on this Vikings team. Even on the offensive line. After the game against the Arizona Cardinals, there's highlights on the offensive line. Overall, though, not where we want to be at this point in the season. Starting the season 0-2, you're way behind. Vikings may be in the NFC North, but these are 2 games. Vikings are 2 plays away from being 2-0, and this can really ruin our season. This missed kick can ruin our season. Both of the missed kicks. Everyone's talking about the 37-yard missed kick. What about the extra point that he missed? Vikings would have went into the overtime where really a coin toss would have defined who wins the game. But anyway, bad start to the season. However, the Vikings next week have their season opener against the Seattle Seahawks, or home opener against the Seattle Seahawks, hosting the Seattle Seahawks, who have Russell Wilson, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett. The best deep threat offense in the NFL. What have the Vikings been bad at? Protecting deep threats. So hopefully this week can be a different story. We're going to be previewing this matchup on Thursday. This is a Sunday matchup in the afternoon. Another game, Minnesota Vikings, Seattle Seahawks, a rivalry that's been going on. This time it's not a Monday Night Football game, so hopefully it can be better with Kirk Cousins. Now, Kirk Cousins has looked good on Monday Night Football. He has. He's just been able to lose a lot of his Monday Night Football games, but his scores, his stats have been great on Monday Night Football. Again, though, this should be another game where it's going to be in the 30s, a shootout in the 30s. I hate to say it. but I'm going to say it. I wouldn't be surprised if the Vikings lost by 1 point again with the Seattle Seahawks. It happened last year. It's happened where the Vikings lost by a field goal the last 2 games. I wouldn't be surprised if it happens. But anyways, Minnesota Vikings, I also wouldn't be surprised if they won by 1 point. So there's that. So I hope it's likely going to be a close matchup in the 30s. Minnesota Vikings, Seahawks, it's always close. Hopefully, though, this time at home. We're finally playing them at home, and it's not a primetime game, so this will likely be a different story. First home game with the Minnesota Vikings with fans since 2019. It's going to be a great matchup, and we'll be previewing it this Thursday on this podcast on YouTube. There's a Morning Kickoff on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thank you.